Hi, everyone. This is Pastor Robert at Good Shepherd Church. School is right around the corner. And it got me thinking when I was in an elementary school many years ago. I loved good weather during recess because I loved playing outside. But even if the weather wasn't good, there were a number of really cool games that we got to do inside. Games like Duck, Duck, Goose, Simon Says. My favorite indoor game was a game called Heads Up, 7 Up. The teacher would choose 7 students, and they would come up to the very front of the classroom. Everyone else had to put their heads on their table, cover their eyes, and close their eyes. And the teacher would turn off the lights, and the 7 students would go around the class and tap one student on the shoulder. When the 7 had already tapped the student on the shoulder, they were brought up front. The teacher would turn the lights on and say, "Heads up." And if you happen to be one of the students who were tapped, you had to guess which student of the 7 tapped you. I love this game because I was good at it. In fact, my success rate baffled my teacher and my peers. What was the secret to my success? Well, I'm not psychic, nor am I that good of a gifted guesser. Here's what I would do. When I had my head down on the desk and I would cover my eyes, I would move myself to the very edge of the desk and with my one eye peek and see the shoes of the person who tapped me. So when it came time to guess what student tapped me, I would look at the shoes. In other words, I cheated. I cheated. I bowed my head down, but I kept one eye open. Now, I would argue that our heads being bowed down and keeping an eye open just might be a good way to pray. There was an occasion once when Jesus sent out his disciples on a missionary journey, and the disciples were given authority to do some pretty miraculous things. They healed the lame, they gave sight to the blind. They also had the ability to cast out demons. There was a daddy who brought his son in hopes that the disciples might cast out this demon that had been tormenting his boy. They failed. They had enjoyed so many successes, but they failed on this occasion. Jesus finally came back, assessed what was taking place, took care of the boy, and then later the disciples asked Jesus, "What happened? Why did we fail? How could we be so successful in all those other occasions, but when it came to that particular boy and that particular demon, we could not do anything?" Jesus said, "This kind can only come out through prayer." I think we tend to forget how powerful are the prayers of the praying person because sometimes it's the only thing that works. Sometimes prayer is the only thing that we can do. And Paul writes in the book of Colossians, 4th chapter, verse 2, he says, "Continue steadfastly in prayer, being watchful in it." Being watchful as you pray. Watchful means to stay awake. And Paul reminds us, I think, in this text, just how easy it is for us to get distracted when we set time to do nothing but pray. So Paul is saying, be watchful, wake up, pay attention while you're praying. But I think even more than that, Paul's saying when we pray, we ought to look for those things which we should be praying for. In other words, we should pray with an eye open. You see, sometimes I think our problem with prayer is that our prayers are too generic. They're too general. They're not specific enough. Maybe sometimes the reason why our prayers aren't being answered in our perspective is that we're really not asking for anything specifically. For example, when someone asks me if I would pray for them, I will usually ask the question, how can I pray? What specifically do you want me to pray for? And that question always seems to stump people. And I wonder if people don't pray specifically because they don't believe God cares for their specific needs, regardless how seemingly small or insignificant our concerns might be from your own perspective. I think the Bible tells us that God does care, that God is paying attention. So I asked the question, how can I pray for you? What specifically do you want me to pray for? Because when you ask that question, it forces someone to go deep, to get personal, to get specific. For example, if I were to go to the Pleasantville Diner and a server asks me what I would like to order, If I say something like, I want breakfast, I probably won't get anything, or worse yet, I'll get something served to me that I don't want at all, like Scrabble. Our prayers need to be specific. James tells us in the 5th chapter, verse 16, that the prayers of the righteous are powerful and effective. And he's talking about fervent prayer. Fervent prayer. The Greek word for fervent means boiling. Boiling prayer, tense prayer. Boiling prayers capture the attention of God. Do you know what boiling prayer is? Boiling prayer is when you have a child being carted off for surgery. Boiling prayer takes place when you have a spouse who has a poor prognosis. Boiling prayer possibly takes place if you get a pink slip or you're going through some major financial obstacle. Boiling prayer means nothing distracts you. You're focused on your need and you're focused on God. One pastor offers this metaphor for boiling prayer. He says, consider a Marine guarding a military base in the Middle East. And consider also a mall cop, security guard, who's assigned to a store at a local mall. Who's going to be more alert, the Marine or the mall cop? The person who's going to be more alert is the one who knows they're on the front lines. Our problem with prayer, I wonder, is that we act like the security guard when in reality, as believers, we are like a Marine in battle zones. Because a Marine has to stay alert because the Marine knows there are so many other people depending upon he or she. And my fear is that some of us don't take prayer seriously because if we were to be honest, we're not sure that it ultimately matters. Or maybe we dabble with prayer when in reality, if you are a believer, you very much are on the spiritual front lines. Because I believe there's nothing more necessary to the Christian, nothing more necessary to be cultivated in the life of a church than genuine, earnest, devout, specific, fervent, boiling prayer. I don't know how you would rate your prayer life today, but I would encourage you to make a commitment today to be more committed to prayer. Speaking of which, would you bow to me in a word of prayer? God, we thank you that you've given us the gift of prayer. And forgive us those moments when we take it for granted, we play with it, we dabble with it, we're not even sure it matters, or we pray with no faith whatsoever, or it's something that we just do out of routine. Hold captive our minds and our hearts and really instill with all of us just how incredibly powerful and significant, how much of a blessing prayer is because you long for fellowship. You long to hear the prayers of your people. So maybe some of us need to echo the request the disciples made of Jesus when they said, Lord, teach us how to pray. So Jesus, teach us how to pray. We pray this in your name. Amen. Hey, I'm glad you took the time to hear a few words from me, and I hope to engage with you next week. God bless.